Okay, let's get going. Colleagues and friends, good day to all of you and welcome. My name is Juho Lipponen and I'm the coordinator of the Clean Energy Ministerial CCUS initiative. And thank you very much for joining us at this webinar in which we will be discussing the key advancements for CCUS and carbon management in 2024. The year is rapidly drawing to a close and plenty happened actually this year. So we'll hear some impressions from our panelists and we'll discuss some of the key highlights of the year. We saw many projects entering operation, proceeding to construction. We had government deployment programs that advanced. Key industry sectors made headway with their projects. International political processes also had an impact. So we'll be hearing about all of that. And of course, all this good progress is absolutely vital because according to many scenarios, we know that we need gigaton scale carbon management very rapidly in the 2030 onwards. This webinar is brought to you by CCUS. We are a group of currently 16 countries from across the world who've come together to accelerate CCUS. We are co-led by 4 countries, Norway, Saudi Arabia, the UK, and the US, and have 12 further full country members. And I'd like to highlight that Brazil is our newest member, having joined the initiative just in October this year. So welcome, Brazil. We are government-led, but not government-only. And on the right-hand side, you see logos of our key partners with whom we work very actively to advance carbon management. And so today we're going to be having a conversation about year 2024 and looking at 2024 in review. So actually, this is all the slides that we have for this event, and I'm going to just stop sharing and I'm going to present our panel here as they are, as you see them live. And actually, if you select the mosaic view on your Zoom tools, you'll be able to hopefully see all of us at the screen, on the screen at the same time, and there'll be no jumping pictures of somebody speaking and you're not seeing the others. So please select the gallery view. So in the panel, we have Carlos Agenor from Ministry of Mines and Energy of Brazil. We have Louise McMorran, UK Department for Energy Security and Net Zero. We have Henriette Nesheim from Norway's Ministry of Energy. Tim Dixon, IAGHG. We have Carl Greenfield from the International Energy Agency. Jared Daniels, Global CCS Institute. We have Justine Rohr from Oil and Gas Climate Initiative. And finally, Thomas Guillot from the Global Cement and Concrete Association. And you saw those logos and the flags in one of the slides there. This really is the extended CCUS family, and a great treat to have this conversation with all of them, all of you today. And we hope you, the audience, will enjoy this. A lot of things happened in 2024. We obviously cannot cover everything in 60 minutes, but we'll be looking and sort of dissecting year 2024 through 5 lenses. Firstly, we'll take a global helicopter view on general developments of what's been happening. Secondly, we'll take some deep dives into a few country developments. Third one is going to be a look into industrial sectors and their advances with carbon management. Fourthly, we will discuss the various international processes, the G20, COP, Clean Energy Ministerial, Mission Innovation, Carbon Management Challenge, and such like, and their impact during 2024. And then finally, we'll construct a year-end wish list for 2025 and see what our panelists would want to have under the Christmas tree for next year. And there won't be any presentations at this event today at all, just conversation around the table on these headlines. And you can ask questions through the Q&A tab, and we'll get to those at towards the end of the event. So with that, let's hit the first part of our discussion, which is the general developments in 2024 and the sort of global mood music for carbon management. And I wanted to start with you, Jared. How would you summarize 2024 from your vantage point? And are we in a better place than a year ago? Over to you.
Well, yep. Well, thank you, and thank you for the lead off. And yeah, I think from my view, globally, it's been a solid year of progress for CCS in many places around the world. Some progress at the project level, some progress at the policy level. And again, I think as a global CCS community, we've had progress expanding the community and having countries and industries join us in this pursuit of deploying CCS alongside everything and consistent with the climate math that says here's the appropriate role of carbon management broadly and carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So just to set the frame, right now globally 50 projects, cumulative nameplate capacity right at 51 million ton per annum of capture capacity in the pipeline post positive financial investment decision and under various forms of construction are another 44 projects that are going to double the amount of installed, another 51 million ton per annum. So right now in the sort of operating or under construction, what I would say are the real projects, just not projects on paper, we're witnessing that doubling of the numbers, which is great. It's taken us 2 decades to get to where we are, and we see a really nice set 44 new projects moving forward. So that's a nice, kind of inflection point for us, I think. But to put that into perspective, that's still a long way to go to get to the gigatons that are needed, right? So not to rest on our laurels. We're tracking many hundreds of projects, which on paper would add an additional, they sum up to 0.4 gigatons. But again, many of us know all of those will not go forward, and there's still lots of hard work yet to do. I think, globally, there's been a consequential election year for many countries, including where I sit in the United States, which has introduced some air bars in terms of, what is U.S. leadership going to look like on climate internationally. But I think from where I sit, many of the projects going forward, strong support here, and there's an expectation that those projects here in the States will continue to go forward. And I think I see that in a number of countries, strong progress at the project level in China and in Saudi and a number of regions, a lot of, full value chain projects being conceptualized and put forward and start to stand up, which is great to see that full value chain in operation. And, we'll be able to engage people to say, hey, look, this is just not on paper. You can come and take a look at these real world operating projects, which is great. We've been tracking a number of transnational, bilateral deals in terms of moving CO2 from country to country. It's a trend I think we'll see continue. How do you optimize on a regional basis and not just in a sovereign nation? There are some countries that don't have storage, but they've got a lot of CO2 emissions they need to deal with. And so that's been progressing. And then the final point I think I'll just open up with is we've seen lots of progress on the policy, legal, regulatory framework development as well. A number of countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, Oman, Brazil, is now, moving forward to develop a storage regulation. So again, all of these to me are positive signs consistent with overall solid progress, a recognition of the appropriate role of CCS. And we've got a lot of work to do as a community to move this forward. So from where I sit, glass is half full and starting to get fuller. And back over to you.
Thank you, Jared. Thanks. Very helpful and positive look forward. Carl, could I come to you next? From IEA's perspective, what was 2024 like for you?
Thanks, Juho, and thanks for the SEM CCUS initiative for putting this on. When you reached out to me a few weeks ago, if we wanted to do this, I thought it was such a great idea to look back, especially because we've seen so much momentum over the last few years, and so it's great exercise to take stock. I'd say for 2024, momentum, which we look at in terms of announcements of projects, this has been exponential and this has been growing over the last few years. But projects starting operation, at least within the past year, it's been incremental. But like Jared said, when we look at the project pipeline, when we look at positive FIDs, when we look at projects that are expected to start operation, we're about to see this inflection points in those projects that are a bit more in advanced stages. In our view, this may not match up with a net zero pathway, at least our net zero pathway, which calls for gigaton scale carbon management by 2030. But this past year does show us that governments, companies are taking carbon management seriously as a way to support their energy and climate goals. There's a few things that are giving me optimism in this past year. We see funding continue to come out of major leader countries and regions like the US and like Europe, and projects are receiving permits in these regions as well, which is a key milestone. Like Jared mentioned, we see a lot of legal and regulatory developments, and we see countries start to enter underneath the global carbon management umbrella, that's expanding a bit of the geographic coverage as well. We have seen in this past year, governments increasing and signaling the importance of carbon management with new strategies being issued, as well as new deals being signed between countries. There's a few things to temper my optimism a bit, and I think this is mainly coming from where I sit at the IEA, looking at the numbers. That's to do with financial investment decisions. So we had dozens and dozens of financial investment decisions supposed to take place in 2024. And while we did get a nice Christmas present in the past week of 3 major FIDs happening, projects are being delayed or FIDs are being pushed a little bit more. And so really, this still shows the challenges that carbon management's facing. And it's not a deal breaker, but at least it's a good reality check for us in the global community to see how can we move these projects to FID, how can we actually start to capture that CO2 and have meaningful emissions reductions or removal. And another thing that's tempering my optimism a bit is some growing public opposition in some regions. And again, this just shows that there's still a lot of groundwork to be laid at the local level. There is a higher level agreement among governments and companies of the importance of carbon management within climate energy goals. But at the end of the day, when you're building these projects and you go into communities, you also need to ensure that the project benefits the community. And in areas where we've seen projects being canceled, it's because those benefits weren't clearly stated to the community. So I think that also shows a little bit of work that we need to do next year. Juho, I'll pass it back to you. I know we have a lot of really smart people eager to give their views on this too, so I'm excited for the rest of the event.
Thanks, Carl. Yeah, thanks also for reminding us that reaching gigaton scale requires actually a lot of projects entering the pipeline now, and while progress is great, so much more is of course needed. Tim, from your viewpoint, 2024 key highlights, developments.
Okay, thank you, Juho, and good day, everybody. And obviously, the most important thing is policies and projects, and Jared and Carl have covered those. But from our perspective, one metric that we follow, obviously, is our conference, the GHGT series, and we had GHGT 17 in Calgary. And this was the largest GHGT conference to date. So that means it was the largest gathering of the CCS community in history. Great, and we hope it keeps on getting larger going forward. And it also had some firsts in it, as well as being the largest. It was the first time, as well as the 7 technical streams, we had a business stream that seemed to be very popular. Jared contributed a lot to that, and Juho, you did as well. Thank you very much. It was the first time we had an Indigenous panel in a conference, first time with student paper awards, and a great youth panel at the end. So that's my sort of key metric as a measure of everything else that's going on in the CCS and carbon management world. That's my one metric that I would throw into the highlights of the year here. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Of course, those who don't know GHGT, it is the place every 2 years for the CCS community globally. So seeing that grow, of course, is an indication of that growing interest across everything, really, from research to policy. So that is, of course, a great signal. What about others in the panel? And does anyone have a favorite development to throw in? Henriette.
Yeah, I can just say from a Norwegian perspective, I think in 2024 we were particularly happy to see the international development in the carbon management, and that carbon management gain tractions in all parts of the world or all regions at the moment, and also that it's increasingly seen as part of the climate solution, both established in Europe, but also that CCUS was so high on the agenda in both SEM and MI this year, in Brazil earlier this year, and also a topic for G20 and for at COP as well. So I think several factors underpin this development. I think as we are moving towards 2030, more and more countries investigate all kinds of opportunities to look for available climate mitigation tool, and I think that more and more countries realize that this can be a possibility. As has been mentioned already, of course, cost reduction, we always have to focus on that, but as we learn and have experience from the CCS, I think more and more we are discussing this as an opportunity, for instance, in hard to abate sectors. So, and we also think it's a new area for this development in CDR. That's opening up. I think that's very interesting for many countries, and I think we also it will always be difficult with public acceptance. I think in general this is an issue in many areas of energy these days, but we also think there is a shift in a positive way, that countries that wasn't even looking and talking about CCS at all, they have actually made a turnaround in 2023, 2024, which we think is very positive. So I just think we need to keep up the good work. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Henriette. Indeed, sort of a global mainstreaming of carbon management. We're hoping that we're starting to see that now. But let's jump to that second part then, which is a few country developments. And starting with you, Louise, we already referred to some big news that we heard. So what you think were noteworthy developments in the UK this year?
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely been a big year for UK CCUS. In 2009, we launched the initial £1 billion competition, and it feels like we've come a very long way since then, although in obviously quite a long time period. So at the end of 2023, we published our vision for a self-sustaining CCUS market, and 2024 has really been about kind of securing major progress in delivering that vision, and in particular in the market creation phase of that. For example, the development of standards for the initial transport and storage networks, consultations on non-pipeline transport and cross-border CO2 networks. We changed government obviously in July, which means that slightly different political perspectives, but in fact our current government has committed to accelerating CCUS in the UK as part of a broader ambition for achieving clean power by 2030 and an expedited journey to net zero. So that backdrop obviously has led us to the place where we in October announced £21.7 billion of funding for the East Coast cluster and HyNet clusters, so the UK's first two CCUS clusters, which will support projects including 2 transport and storage companies, and also 3 initial emitter projects, which include a CCUS-enabled energy from waste facility, a CCUS-enabled blue hydrogen plant, and a first-of-a-kind CCUS gas power plant. So very exciting. And then even more excitingly, as we've alluded to just before, last week, the first projects in the East Coast cluster reached financial close and contracts were signed. So that means construction can begin in mid-2025 and operations starting in 2028. And part of that process also included the North Sea Transition Authority awarding its first ever carbon storage permit to the Endurance Store. So very exciting. We hope we'll see the HyNet contract signed in the coming months. And I guess I would just say more broadly, we're really delighted that taking these strides with our first clusters shows that our business models can attract investment and deliver results, which is brilliant. And also we're really positive about the UK approach towards reducing cross-chain risk through the cluster model, and hope that that will pave the way for long-term certainty and investability, and generally that that 2024 is just the start of this transformative period in UK CCUS, along with CCUS globally. Fingers crossed. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Louise. Yeah, certainly a lot happened, and always, moving from a lot of preparatory work actually into action and investment. That's a great step, and especially in in the area of carbon management. Let's jump over to the other side of the Atlantic, to our newest member, Brazil, and Carlos. If you could give us a sense of what you think 2024 brought for carbon management in Brazil.
Okay, thank you, Juho. Good morning, afternoon, and night for all that are following us in this workshop. My name is Carlos. I'm director of the Department of Exploration and Production of Oil and Gas here at Brazil at the Mine and Energy Ministry. As Juho said, we recently joined CCUS initiative. And it's very important for us because we have a lot of challenge ahead. And being part of this initiative can make our roadmap easier to face the adverse effects of the climate crisis. Brazil and the world has a huge challenge to get the compromises of the Paris Agreement and get net zero by 2050. Here in Brazil, we are very proud of the presence of renewable in our energy metrics, something around 50%. The electric metrics is even better, 85% of renewables. And now in Brazil, we're in the middle of the discussion of the climate mitigation plan in the country. And we have a signal that the emission from the energy sector must be negative by 2050 to get the net zero. And CCS will be part, must be, not will be, must be part of it. 2024 was a great year for Brazil to advance in CCS. We've set this year the legal framework for the development of carbon management, approving the Fuel of the Future law. And under the approval of this law, we put our national oil, natural gas, and biofuel agency, ANP, in charge of the regulation of the CCS. And recently, we also approved the carbon market law. And this is very important for us to establish the business model for the development of carbon capture and storage here in Brazil. As everyone knows, Brazil has one of the largest sequestration projects in the world, the CCUS that have now in the Santos Basin. Actually, we're talking about 20 million tons of CO2 per year. And by 2030, we'll be injecting more than 40 million tons of CO2 per year. But this don't seem to us that, okay, we are going through the net zero under this project. No, because we took the CO2 from the ground and reinject underground and have an increase of our recovery. But recently, we have made here, recently I said last week, a workshop here, and put together the regulator NP, our EPE, that's our environmental energy planning institution here, and also companies and institutions. We put companies that have projects here in order to say, okay, we have this law that was put in place, and what we can do to move on. What do you need to move on your projects? And it was very, very good to see that there is project here in Brazil in CCS. Petrobras handles some projects in CCS, not the CCUS that he's making on offshore, CCS onshore. There is two companies that make BECCS, the projects of BECCS. One, I know that's following us, is Manacá. that's following us in this meeting. And also we have one project of one pilot in DEX. What's our mission here? We need to deliver these and other projects in order to have the key points that we have to face to advance toward net zero from 2050 onwards. We know that there is a lot of challenges ahead. We start this traveling on this road right now, and being part of CCUS can make our road map very, very easy. Thanks, Juho, for the invitation to us to share these 3 words. And I think that this next year will be great for us.
Thank you, Carlos. Yeah, you said that being member of CCUS will make your roadmap very easy. Well, I'm going to doubt that, but we will certainly be there to help. And of course, Brazil was also at the center stage of the wider Clean Energy Ministerial family this year when you hosted the meeting in October, which was really great. We'll get back to that in a bit later. But thanks, Carlos, for the Brazil views. And maybe back briefly over to you, Henriette, on Norway developments. You also moved ahead quite significantly with your projects.
Yes, thank you very much, Juho. So briefly, Norway's objectives for carbon management can be summarized in 4 points. It's to contribute to rapid development of carbon management globally, develop carbon management as a new green industry, develop commercial CO2 storage capacity at the Norwegian continental shelf, and develop industrial CO2 capture in Norway. In the first quarter of 2024, we worked on establishing MOUs with neighboring countries under the London Protocol around the North Sea. And on the 15th of April, Norway signed 4 MOUs with Sweden, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Belgium, respectively. And Norway shares common legislative framework on CCS with the EU through the EA agreement, which facilitated the process. So the international aspect is important to us, and the cross-border element is key for Norway as a small country to establish a viable CCS value chain. So we are also in the similar process with Finland and France at the moment. Yesterday, on the 16th of December, we had a visit from the UK Prime Minister, and together with the Norwegian Prime Minister, they agreed a new green industrial partnership. And the 2 countries have committed to initiate work to identify gaps and challenges to the development of our common North Sea as a hub for carbon storage, and to develop also a bilateral agreement or arrangement on cross-border transport of CO2 under the London Protocol. And Norway is also in talks with Switzerland about developing a joint CDR pilot project under Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. Since 2020, Norway has launched the full-scale Longship project, where the government alleviates project risks and took on the role of the middleman to solve the coordination challenge between emitters and storage operators. In the autumn 2024, we were very happy to celebrate the completion of the Northern Lights terminal at Øygarden at the west coast of Norway, which is the storage site. And we can also mention that the ships for CO2 transportation are on their way to Norway as we speak. So the capture plans for cement at Heidelberg is also progressing according to plan. So in addition to the Northern Lights storage facility, 10 additional exploration licenses for CO2 storages are awarded by the ministry. And in the next batch, 3 additional applications from 6 companies are currently being assessed by the ministry. So in addition, the government is currently looking into some market inefficiencies by considering a new transitory support scheme for CO2 management to bridge the gap before a well-functioning market is in place. So I think this is what we have done so far in 2024. Thank you.
Thanks, Henriette. That's certainly heaps in 2024. But yeah, wonderful to see how the Northern Lights project and all its different pieces are actually and have progressed today with the terminal and with the Heidelberg plant being ready, with the ships moving towards their home ports now. So that's of course wonderful. We've covered 3 countries in a bit more detail. Jared, you mentioned China in your early intervention. There's obviously a lot of emerging economies that are important in this area. Did you have any quick points to make maybe on China, India, and other countries?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Juho. Happy to make, a couple of points. And again, I think in Southeast Asia, all the math shows the exponential growth in energy demand and needs. And so I think as a community, we've seen, commensurate interest in CCS to help that be decarbonized going forward. And we've seen, driven by Japan, a lot of interest in what's that business model, really to optimize across the region in Southeast Asia. So that's one region of keen interest. I think China specifically is the world's largest, emitter and second largest economy. It's clear we can't solve climate without the U.S. and in China being a large part of that solution, given the 2 largest economies and emitters. I was just in China last week. Really nice to see solid progress at scale, at pace and speed and scale you can really only see in China for some aspects. For CCS on industry. And so right now, China Energy, which is the world's largest power company, world's largest wind power company, world's largest thermal power company, they've had a project, a CCS retrofit on a state-of-the-art coal plant up and running now for about 1.5 years, operating remarkably well. I was talking with their R&D lead last week, and they have plans to deploy CCS on additional plants, both retrofit and new build going forward at multiple million ton per annum. China Huanong, which is the 2nd largest power company in the world, this month they should finish construction of a brand new, fully integrated from day one CCS on a brand new advanced coal plant. That should start operation early next year. 1.5 million ton per annum. So just 2 examples of, sort of the projects that are moving forward at scale in China. I visited last week, 10 days ago, I believe the world's largest operating CCS on a cement facility, oxy-combustion with capture at a 200,000 ton per annum scale that's been operating well in China as well. So across a number of sectors, you can see, projects at commercial relevant scale moving forward, which is nice to see. Still some uncertainty in terms of what policy is going to drive deployment on a broader sense in China. But we've seen over this last year some policy progress as well that's incentivizing, some additional projects going forward. So again, lots to look forward to there from China as well, and tremendous need, I think, in the global South, specifically where we still see a lot of growth, and so there's going to be hopefully an opportunity and a path for decarbonized growth as we all move forward.
Great, thanks, Jared. And we can maybe cover some other countries a bit later on if during the discussion. But that's really useful and helpful to know also about China, where we know that when things get moving, they really get moving, and that's the case with carbon management too. Okay, well, 2 folks who have not yet spoken. That's our industry partners, GCCA and OGCI. You're dying to get to say what you want to say about 2024. So could I maybe, Justine, you opened your microphone, come to you first, and if you can give us your favorite bits from 2024 from OGCI's perspective.
Yes, hi everyone, and really pleased to be here today with you. So for us, 2024 was actually indeed a very good year, and I will try not to be repetitive compared to what the previous have spoken about, because indeed we have some overlap in terms of projects. So across the 12 member companies, the 12 member oil and gas companies that we have within OGCI, they have been involved in the creation of more than 40 hubs across the world, right? Around like 400 MTPA. But obviously not all of them are at the same stage, right? And so For 2024, on our side, we've seen a number of projects coming actually into operations. And so, Henriette, you were talking about Northern Lights. Of course, it was one of the highlights of the year. Louise, you mentioned also one of the hubs, the NEP project that we've had. And we were really pleased to be with Equinor and BP and Shell last week to celebrate this milestone. But we had also, for instance, in Italy, the Ravenna project that was started as well, around 25,000, I think, tons per annum at the moment for phase one, and expected to scale up in the coming phases. We were with our Chinese CNPC, being one of the member companies of OGCI. We were with the CNPC last week, and they were also sharing their progress in China, which seems, as Jan mentioned, like crazy in terms of speed and scale compared to when they started with us a few years ago. So it seems that obviously 2024 was outstanding year on CCS OGCI wise, right? We also released a number of white papers that focus on region specifically, and Carlos was talking about Brazil. We had this assessment and deep dive, regional deep dive, early January 2024, which led in a lot of insightful discussions throughout the year through DCI. So we were very grateful to have this discussion. We are finishing APAC, and we are starting India with our friends from GCCSI as well. So this is something that we really look forward. But we've seen an uptake in terms of discussion and also from the stakeholders. And I will leave the floor to Thomas in a minute, but like with our customers as well, the steel association, the cement, and so on. This is something that we've witnessed. And so also that has energized the member companies in accelerating in a way.
Thank you, Justine. Thanks a lot. And finally, over to you, Thomas, as the lead of Global Cement and Concrete Association. You've been very active in this area for a number of years. So what was 2024 like for you?
So last but not least, right? That's usually the term we use in this case. So how much time I have? I mean, I have until the hour, correct? So I'll be exhaustive.
Try to contain yourself, Thomas. 2 minutes.
No, seriously. I mean, I think the progress on I will basically concur with most of what you have said. You have actually made a few comments already on our industry, on where we are going. But fundamentally, I mean, I joined with the colleagues here to say that 2024 was really a marking year with tremendous progress. And I think, I mean, if I put them in a few examples, I mean, the first one that I would like to highlight is the number of countries that have engaged into our net zero accelerator, where we actually map out, the net zero trajectory for the countries, our cement sector in relevant countries where the carbon capture, use and store is evidenced as one of the solutions. In our global roadmap, it's about 36% when you count the whole value chain. Certainly a little bit more if you only focus on cement or concrete in percentage. So it's really an essential lever for us to reach net zero. And we need to anticipate the moment where we need it. I mean, we all know that carbon capture project takes some time. We need to master the technology. We need to appropriate ourselves the ability to run kilns with these technologies. I mean, the first kiln, not the first one, but the first one in Europe, industrial scale, will be in Brevik, in Norway, with Heidelberg Material in spring this year. So this is really important to actually start thinking about it, working about it, etc. On this point, big progress in India. I mean, we talked about country earlier, but I think India is also a big country. We have worked with the industry and also with the help of Global CCS Institutes on 2 fundamental projects to identify, strategize the future needs for carbon capture, use and store by the cement industry in the country, developing basically the hubs, the vision, linking these hubs to the reality of the storage. And we have worked also on a set of policy transformation, policy framework that needs to be adapted in India. So these are really I want to say the step zero or the homework of an industry like us to actually advance in the topic of carbon capture, use and store. And this is a very important milestone. Now, more important, I think, is also the visibility of the project. So we have a project tracker which we share with lead IT. And in this project tracker, we have currently 58 projects being visible, being nominated public about CCUS development. Out of that, we have about 42 that are industrial scale, so that are not just a little pilot or smaller scale things, but really industrial scale development for a total of 25 million tons of capture. And we have made a survey through our membership base. They have declared an additional 42 projects, of which 29 are industrial scale with another 25 million tons of capture capacity. Altogether, that's nearly 50 million tons of capture capacity, but on a very small geography. So if you take the geography, we talk about Europe, US, Canada, essentially, right? There is a few projects in China, as you said, a few projects in other continents, but the bunch of the projects are there. And if you put that in comparison to the future needs of CCUS, I mean, we are talking about a coverage of about 30% of the current CO2 footprint of our industry in this territory. So that's a remarkable development, I think, of an industry that a few years ago was not having too many projects to show. So a very big rate of adoption in our industry, and also, of course, visible and supported by the different European or American or Canadian funds, grants, etc. And I want to cite here the European Innovation Fund that is really super helpful in the development of that. I want to voice also the going back to Global South, the discussion that we have with UNIDO. I mean, the UNIDO on Canada is sponsoring the development of a demonstration project in Thailand. And we will continue working on that. And I think this was really an interesting cooperation that will try to multiply in the context of the breakthrough cement, which is also chaired by Canada on Emirates in the industry, where we want to multiply this type of bilateral cooperation between countries and trying to really support relevant countries in the Global South to elevate the discussion. So I'm joining the colleagues also to wish to cite the progress made in the Carbon Management Challenge, the Carbon Pricing Challenge, on all these initiatives, ITA, Industrial Transition Accelerator, on the different with Lead IT, the work we do with Lead IT, etc., to voice the importance that we have. On that part, we also had the news of a new project just today, supported by the Saudis, the colleagues from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, on the development of a study on the carbon management in the Middle East, supported by UNIDO, on where we are partnering also. Last point on innovation, I want to say also that we are making tremendous progress. I used to say that innovation for us is not a necessity as such, because we believe that we can do the roadmap and we know that the carbon capture is already an available technology. But certainly we made huge progress in terms of pace of adoptions, on cost, on efficiency of adoptions, right? And there we are making also a lot of progress. We have launched our various challenge. We are signing consortium. We already have a few consortium signed between members on the technology of carbon capture, and we'll sign another probably 6 to 10 consortium in the beginning of next year on advancing technologies on capture, things like new type of amine, new type of capture through mineralization, new type of metal organic framework, these type of things that are really, really interesting and makes the carbon capture going into a complete different dimension in terms of cost, which will have a huge impact in our industry in the adoption of that technology. Well, I said I would be not too long, so I stop here. Thank you, Joe.
No, but thank you, Thomas, and thanks so much for your leadership. And also, I think it's worth noting that the cement industry has really become a leading group and a leading industry in the area of carbon management over the past few years, and it's great to see how you've you've seen the need, but then how you've come very actively into this area of policy making, of making connections and making these things actually happen. So that's really great. We still have a number of points to cover in the last 15 minutes, but we don't have anyone really from the power sector represented. But did anyone have a point on the power sector developments this year? Tim, you're raising your hand.
Yeah, just to note the year in review, a milestone was achieved with 10 years of operation of Boundary Dam 3, 6.5 million tonnes of CO2 captured, transported and injected. Lots of learning for that first full-scale amine capture plant on a coal exhaust gas. So congratulations to them for reaching 10 years and keeping on going.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's a good, very good to know. Thanks, Tim. And Louise, you put your hand up too.
Yeah, thanks, Juho. I was just going to mention, I said it obviously in my remarks earlier, but the UK has obviously just they've reached financial close on the world's first ever at-scale gas power plant with carbon capture. Won't go into any details on it given time, but yeah, I think that's a really exciting development, and keen to talk more about that in the new year. Thanks.
Great. And Jared.
And just to jump in as well, you know, I think we've seen interest and activity on putting CCS on gas combined cycle here in the United States, and we would expect that trend will be, you know, growing as we go forward. There's an increase for electricity demand driven by new data centers and all of the AI interest. And so here, where shale gas is cheap, natural gas combined cycle with CCS looks to be the lowest cost of dispatchable low carbon electricity onto the grid. So I'm excited. If you look globally, what Louise just mentioned, and in Tim, you look at, you know, in the work going on in China and the Middle East as well, you know, hopefully we'll see some of these projects go forward. Right now on gas, we're still at serial number 0. It would be great to increment that up and, you know, have several, you know, working projects in the near future.
Great, thanks, Jared. And yeah, indeed, 10 years ago, or maybe even longer than that, there was a lot of emphasis on power in the CCS discussion. It faded. Emphasis went much more on heavy industries and so on. But I think now we're seeing some awakening also in that area, which is good. Now, next section is going to be about international processes. We mentioned G20, G7 when we were listing these in the beginning. I think we can sort of brush over G20, G7 quite rapidly just by saying that these are forums that allow for political ambitions to be put on paper and to be put forward. And again, this year, both have recognized carbon management as a key technology to have to be implemented. But then implementation happens elsewhere, and processes such as Clean Energy Ministerial and the Carbon Management Challenge, for example, are then avenues to make that process in a concrete manner. So I think we can just say that G7 and G20 were helpful, and in the remaining minutes, I think we should move to some other processes that were equally interesting. And I would propose to go to COP next. And starting with you, Tim, you've been at the COP flying the CCUS flag for a very, very long time. So how was it like? What was it like this year, and what progress was made?
Okay, yeah, I'll be as quick as I can. Disappointing COP at the high level. It was meant to be the finance COP. People wanted a bigger number, agreed. 1.3 trillion was the ask for developing countries. 300 billion per annum by 2035 was what was actually agreed. But we nearly didn't get anything. Countries walked out in the final plenary because of it. They got it over the line at 300 billion with a roadmap to build it up going forward. So there's something there, even though it's not as large as people wanted. So it's got a new acronym, the new Collective Quantified Goal, NCQG. It's hard to pronounce quickly. It's important because it's going to fund all the mitigation activities that will include CCS and carbon management. And included within that is the Green Climate Fund. And just to mention, another highlight of the year was the first, after 7 years of trying, we enabled Trinidad, or assisted Trinidad and Tobago to get some money from the Green Climate Fund, which is the largest fund for developing countries on climate change. So that was another milestone this year. From CCS perspective, the good news was the Article 6, in terms of the two mechanisms, 6.2, 6.4, were agreed finally. The 6.4 was the activity-based or project-based mechanism, and two standards were accepted at this COP, the standard on methodologies and the standard on removals. And the removal standard includes CCS because it includes emission reductions with a risk of reversal. So that's very good. It puts in place the international carbon market framework for international carbon management projects. And that will facilitate the financial returns to projects such as Jared was talking about, transboundary projects in Southeast Asia and elsewhere. So that's my quick summary of the outcomes from COP.
And Tim, your impression, having seen quite a few COPs, I don't know how many you have under your belt, but was this better, less good, as good as some other COPs?
Depends how you're measuring it. It's my 21st COP when I counted back. What matters is the policy agreements on reducing emissions, and they were disappointing. Because we had progress at the last COP28 in Dubai with a text on transitioning away from fossil fuels in line with the science, tripling renewables, doubling energy efficiency, accelerating CCUS. None of that even could be repeated in the outcome text. So that was really disappointing that they couldn't even make proper reference to it, let alone what they wanted to do was put in place the means of implementing and monitoring and checking the implementation of it. It just didn't achieve that. It was very busy, less people there, but still very busy, 65,000 people, well organized logistically, pleasant city to be in, as Jared would vouch. CCS, there was less protests mentioning CCS. That was healthy for us. We're always ready to welcome everybody into our events. We had the main official event and another event there, but we didn't really get any criticism or protests at all. But we welcome all questions. Our booth was non-stop busy. It was too busy. We didn't have enough people to man it. But that showed really healthy interest in information on CCS. And Jared, I'm sure, would say the same from their activities there.
Yeah. Does anyone else want to comment on COP with some brief remarks? Justin.
Yes, very quickly. So aligning with Tim, obviously on the outcomes, I think COP28 was like quite significant one in terms of outcomes, and this one seemed to be less clearly more complicated to land on something. CCUS wise, I mean, and this is something that is ongoing, right? So clearly on my side, it's really blurry still. But I think the two documents that Tim mentions, and particularly the ones on the standards for the removals, is something that will have an impact as well, because now that all of these mechanisms, Article 6.4 and the carbon markets, etc., are now implemented and can be used. I think these documents will have like zillions of insights to provide to the CCS communities in terms of risk assessments and in terms of how this pool will be framed and quantified and so on, and what's the role of the supervisory body, which seems really omnipotent in the document. And so this is something that might bring additional people into this community that were probably less exposed in the past. And for instance, I'm thinking about the insurance companies and how this perception of the risks and so on. All of these definitions and concepts and so on will be something that needs to be commonly accepted and defined and agreed on if we want the dynamics that we've discussed so far to continue. I think this is something that will be critical in the next months to commonly assess and align on, so we can ensure that we can use all of the mechanisms that are in place to scale up the CCS as well.
Okay, thank you, Justine. We don't have that much time left. I think we should mention the Clean Energy Ministerial, though, our mothership, the process under which the CCUS works. Brazil hosted CEM in early October in Foz do Iguaçu. Over 1,000 delegates, very nice and impactful meeting. Brazil hosted CEM back to back with G20 energy ministers, which I think was a great show of synergy, using the synergy of the two processes, getting ministers in place and just having excellent attendance. We hopefully did our job in mainstreaming carbon management. Once again, we had a ministerial discussion on carbon management with several ministers in there, looking at how we can accelerate carbon management development, including also CDR. And also we launched a new campaign called Gigaton by 2030, which is to support the carbon management challenge going forward. But on the carbon management challenge, perhaps Jared, if you had any thoughts on where we went with that during the year, and then we come to the last question after that.
Okay, well, yeah, and just real quickly, I think the Carbon Management Challenge, new kid on the block in terms of mechanisms we have as a community to work with. It's the first one multilateral effort aligned with the Paris agreement. The goal of a gigaton by 2030 is an aspirational goal. There's now government leaders from 22 countries plus the European Commission working together to advance carbon management. Definitely has to be public-private effort, and there's now healthy discussion of how now can this group of government leading governments engage industry leaders across the sectors we need to work with, and also engage the NGO community. The governance framework is being finalized. There's 3 work streams that are being led by both developed and developing countries. The first one is on developing country project finance, led by Kenya, Indonesia, and the US. From my perspective, being a card-carrying member of the community here for a long time, I think this gives us a really good shot of engaging the multilateral development banks and others in the finance sector to help progress developing country project financing for CCS. Right? We've got a coalition of all the key lead countries, and I think that gravitas that can hopefully make that successful. Another work stream is progressing deployment of CCS and sort of project tracking. How can we get CCS more explicitly in the conversation in country level NDCs and technology needs assessments? And so we're progressing that as well. Brazil is leading that effort. And then, the strategic communications and engagement. What's the role of CCS? How does this fit into everything else we need to do to help decarbonize society? Saudi Arabia was the initial lead, and at the COP, the UK said, they step up as a co-lead as well. So Louise, thank you and your colleagues for leading that. At that COP event, there's a second event where we convened, folks at ministerial level at the COP. Over 20 countries engaged, which I thought was a promising sign, including additional countries such as Greece and Germany engaging at senior levels in the conversation. Over 100 observers, and again, it's nice to see this growing momentum. So, from my view, as I look past the last year, I think the Carbon Management Challenge incremented a ways forward, and it's another tool that we have as a community to work with as we go forward next year.
Thanks, Jared, and of course, CEM CCUS and all of us were fully behind that challenge, and gigaton scale by 2030 requires action by really all of us, and without any waiting. Okay, well, I think it's time for a very last rapid fire question, and that is about 2025. So I would like to ask every panelist to really comment in 20 to 30 seconds what you would like to see under the Christmas tree as a present for next year. And I'm going to start going around my screen here. I'm going to start with Justine.
Sorry, I was not ready to go first. Okay, it might be the easiest one then, because at the end, you come back and you say all of the above. So I will kickstart. So on our side, obviously, as I was mentioning, we've seen great progress in 2024. 2025, obviously, we wish that our member companies will develop as much as they did in 2024. And we've seen also some sectors now asking our help and collaboration, and this is something that I would like to see straightened in 2025 alongside of the implementation of this Article 6.4 that we were talking minutes ago.
Thanks, Justine. Over to you, Tim.
Okay, I've got three things, but just before I say those, just to note this year, celebrating in the Global South 2 new centres of excellence in Trinidad and Tobago and Colombia starting. It's great, we need that. Three things for next year. A good COP30, please, in Brazil. Second thing, Northern Lights receiving their first and injecting their first CO2. Henrietta, please. Looking forward to that. And thirdly, Louise, the HyNet project getting FID as well, please.
Thank you, Tim. Next one on my screen here is going to be Henrietta. How do you respond?
Yes, I think that my wish aligns very well with Tim's wish. I would also very much like to see and look forward to see the Longship project in full operation and successful operation, and that Heidelberg should be reaching completion of the building phase by the late spring of 2025. So I think that since we are two who wishes for that, I think, yeah, we should be closer, I think. Thanks.
Thank you, Henrietta. Then I'm going to pass it over to Louise.
Thanks, Juho. Yeah, I think I would agree with everything everyone said so far. I think I would also draw out cost reduction. It's a key challenge for everyone involved in projects. So trying to find some way to kind of address the reduction in cost of technology and infrastructure. I would say that public acceptance, public narrative that we raised before. So really trying to find a way of shaping that positively, and the UK is keen to do that with partners through the Carbon Management Challenge. And related to both of the above, greater international collaboration to tackle both of those things. We think that the SEM CCUS initiative, CMC, and other forums are really great for progressing some of these things. So keen to work further on all of that. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much, Louise. Over to you, Jared.
Well, real quickly, I think, again, solid progress and policy development in more countries, and to see that expand into, especially the countries that have exponential demands in their growth. And then again, as others have mentioned, more CCS projects getting to FID, specifically in the power sector, both on, coal in some nations, but in gas combined cycle, and then in, cement and steel. And I think, we're starting to see some progress in those, but there's so much more we need to do.
Okay, and how about you, Carlos? What are your wishes?
Well, my wishes for the next year is to us finish our regulatory framework for the implementation of CCUS here in Brazil. We have some initiative of ANP and the companies like, okay, let's start with a pilot project in order to make this regulation here in our country, and I think that this will be my wishes, and this regulatory framework as fast as possible, and as interest possible for the company to make the investment here in Brazil. We have some key points, and we have to address these key points under our regulation.
Great, thank you, Carlos. And Carl, final word to you. Wishes for 2025.
Thanks, Juho. I kind of wish we all touched base before this on our wishes, because, well, I guess maybe if we all wish for the same thing, it's more likely to come true. But really echoing the thoughts of what a lot of folks said here, I'm mainly interested to see how do we continue this momentum that we've seen in the last few years. It's really, in the past, it's been driven by major funding packages coming out of leader countries and regions. We've had a bit of a political changeover in a few countries and few regions through elections this past year. We may not see major new funding packages come out, but we will hopefully see new FIDs, new projects starting operation. So I'm interested to see if we can continue to drive this momentum through showing that CCUS technologies are proven, that they're investable, that they can contribute to our climate goals. And I think by moving to FID, by having project start operation, and also by widening the geographic umbrella for carbon management, I think we can show that. So I'm excited to see that for next year.
Thank you very much, Carl. And thanks, everybody. We are going to have to draw this meeting and this conversation to a close. Thomas.
Of course, you forgot me, Joe.
I'm very sorry.
At the
I'm
very
very
end of
sorry.
screen. Now, quickly for 2025, a couple of things that I wanted to say. First, Breivik, of course, I mean, the plant in Norway, you mentioned it already. We'll have a session in China with China Building Material Federation on GCSI, also to mobilize the Chinese colleagues on the matter. I think that's something important where we want to have a success. Of course, the development of the Carbon Management Challenge. I mean, this is very, very, very important for us. We need to have the value chain right in many countries. That's really a no-brainer. And last, it's the use of the Article 6 on systems like book and claim to bring a business case in Global South. We need that, especially in cement. 80% of the production of cement is in the Global South. We cannot do it if we don't have an investable proposition. We need to make CCUS an investable proposition in CCUS through this type of schemes. And I hope Jared will work on that also in 2025 to work together on that.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you, Thomas. I owe you one. I think I need to get new glasses. Somehow they, blocked you off from my
I will remember.
Yeah. Thank you very much for all these views. It's been really fantastic. Year draws to a close, and I hope that everybody out there in front of your screens, you've found this interesting, and you've heard some good reminders of what happened in 2025, and also some interesting wishes for next year. So all the panelists, friends, thank you so much for your time and insights. Everybody out there, thanks for your time and interest in our program today. And everybody have a safe and joyful year-end festive period, and we'll see you all in 2025. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.